Welcome to Oregon Indie Film, a video podcast that shines the light on Oregon's independent film industry. I'm your host, Dawn Sellers. I interview Oregon's independent filmmakers who offer insights into the creative process, challenges, and triumphs of making movies in Oregon. This summer, I'm doing a series of interviews with local filmmakers whose work will be screened at the Portland Festival of Cinema, Animation, and Technology, also known as PFCAT. The festival happens August 18th through the 23rd at OMSI in Portland. At PFCAT, you'll experience 170 indie films from 30 countries. There will be filmmaker Q&As, educational panels, and networking events. It's 6 days of events that brings our local community together through visionary film and animation. You can find the full schedule and tickets at pdxfestofcinema.com. This link will be included in this episode's show notes. Today's guest is the first in this series. Erika Bolstad is a journalist, author, and documentarian. Her short documentary, The Elk, will be screened during the opening night at the Portland Festival of Cinema, Animation, and Technology. The subject of her 30-minute documentary is Portland's Thompson elk statue and the unfolding fate of the elk and other monuments, telling the story of a nation divided over who and what belongs on a pedestal. Erika shares how this project came to be and her other projects, as well as her experience in the recent Sundance collab and traveling around the country researching monuments, their effect on communities, and the stories that they tell. If you're watching this interview, you'll notice the t-shirt Erika is wearing with the artwork of the elk. You can get your own t-shirt and support Erika's film at makingmonumental.com. I hope you enjoy this episode of Oregon Indie Film. Welcome to Oregon Indie Film. I'm here today with my guest, Erika Bolstad, and we're here, actually, you are the first in a series of filmmakers I'm interviewing for the
PFCAT, or Portland Festival of Cinema, Animation, and Technology.
There we go, the Portland Festival of Cinema, Animation, and Technology, which you're screening The Elk on Friday, August 21st, which I think is the first night.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's very exciting.
But first, let's start off by having you just tell me who you are and what you do. You have quite a background as I was researching
Yeah, it's all
you.
over the place. Well, I usually just describe myself as a journalist, first and foremost. That's kind of the catch-all for what I do, I think. I've been a journalist for many decades. I worked in newspapers for most of my career and for news organizations, and then wrote a book, a nonfiction memoir, a narrative nonfiction memoir that has a lot of reporting in it and research in it, and went to grad school to learn how to make documentaries, and I decided to make documentaries. So I come at the process from from that background as a journalist and as someone who has worked in narrative nonfiction, and that's basically what I do.
Yeah. So your book, Windfall, was a finalist for the Oregon Book Award. Mm-hmm. So congratulations for that. And you have also been a finalist for a Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Well, 2007. It's a little bit ago. But
yeah,
so that's very exciting. And you went to graduate school at U of O, is that right?
I did. Yes. Mm-hmm. I moved back to Oregon. I grew up out here. Okay. And I lived on the East Coast for a big chunk of my adult life. In Florida for a while, I worked for the Miami Herald. And then I lived in Washington, D.C. for a decade. And
reporting on politics.
Yeah, politics and climate change and environmental issues. And so I decided to move back to Oregon in 2017. My father was just having some health difficulties and was diagnosed with dementia, and I came back to help him out a little bit this time, almost 9 years ago, and I just I had forgotten how magical Oregon was in the summer. And I came back and I was like, oh, I don't know. I remember calling my husband and saying, I think we should move out here. And we were kind of at a good point in our lives where we needed a big change too. And so we came out here to be closer to my dad, to help him out. He now lives with us. And I was kind of looking around, like trying to figure out what was next in my career as a journalist. And I'd always been drawn to the visual part of the work. I've always, enjoyed photography. And I decided to go to a grad school program in my 40s to learn how to make documentaries. Basically, I mean, it's a multimedia storytelling program, is what they call it now. But I really wanted to bring, take what I have as someone who's mostly worked in the written word, and take the visuals and make nonfiction work out of it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's sort of a natural evolution of the work you'd been doing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And so you call Portland home then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even though you've lived all over.
Yeah, no. I mean, I grew up in Oregon. I consider myself, I've always considered myself first and foremost an Oregonian. Portland's home.
So did you grow up in Portland then? Or?
No, I actually grew up in a little tiny town, Willamina. Which is, a lot of people in Oregon don't even know where it is. It's in between, I guess the best way to describe it is in between McMinnville and Lincoln City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see it on the way to the coast usually.
That's right. Yep.
So that's how people know where it is. Yeah. Well, today we're here to talk about your documentary, The Elk, which is such a Portland story.
Yeah.
If people don't know, the elk statue had a bit of a break for the last few years. And so tell me about that. Tell me about what was let's start with just your inspiration for doing this documentary.
Yeah, sure. So it's a 30-minute film and short film. Initially, I actually am working on a longer version, a feature-length version of the story of the monuments that were toppled or removed in 2020 in Portland. And originally, the idea was really big. It was like to look at how all of these monuments around the country along the path of westward expansion had been taken down or toppled or being reconsidered. And it was just a story that I didn't really think was getting covered in 2020 and in the years following. A lot of the focus had been on, say, Confederate monuments, right, there just wasn't this focus on like these emblems of westward expansion and what they meant to the American story and what they symbolize. And there was a reconsideration of them. There is a reconsideration of a lot of them that's happening. And I was looking for a story around that, and I thought maybe I'd write a book or maybe I'd do a film. I wasn't really sure. And so I started, doing research. I did a bunch of travel just in some of the work that I was doing, other work that I was doing. And I went to like St. Louis and, the beginning of the Oregon Trail. I went to Kansas City, where there are a ton of monuments actually, and Denver, where there's also a bunch of monuments. And I was seeing all these patterns. A lot of there's one sculptor in particular who has a lot of these big monuments to westward expansion. A fellow by the name of Alexander Phimister Proctor. And I don't want to nerd out too much, but
it's very interesting.
But he has a lot of sculptures in Oregon. In particular, he was born and raised in Denver, and is considered a premier sort of Western sculptor. But there's been a real reconsideration of some of his work. And in fact, two of his monuments were at the University of Oregon, were toppled in 2020. And then the Theodore Roosevelt Monument in Portland was toppled in 2020 as well. And so I started to put all these things together, started to like connect some dots. And in 2024, the city, I followed this story for a while. You know, I've been like kind of following it, actually before that even, and really quite a bit in 2023 when I was on book tour and I went to all these places and saw, you know, started pulling all these strings. And so I was just assembling all this research, doing some early shoots, and gathering a lot of material, doing some interviews, starting to generate some sources for the project. And in 2024, the city of Portland had a monument symposium, and that was kind of our first official day of filming on the monumental project. We hadn't. I had been doing like, you know, just some test shoots and some scouting, but I hadn't done. You know, that was like official first day of production. And I was looking more toward like this feature-length version of the story, and, you know, trying to figure out what it was and starting to gather string. And kept just doing that, kept pulling threads. And then one of the first people that we interviewed on camera in 2025 said, hey, you know, the elk is going to be the first monument to come back, probably. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And I actually hadn't really thought about the elk as a piece of the overall monument story that I was telling. It's kind of has its own narrative. It does have its own narrative, not kind of. And I didn't see it as part of the main story about these emblems of westward expansion. But the elk has had this, like, the more I started digging into it, this really intriguing story. And so I was initially going to do like a 10-minute film about it. Probably a pretty like happy-go-lucky film about like
it's coming back.
It's coming back. People are thrilled that it's coming back to Portland, and I wanted it to have it as a sample for you know, for applying for grants, for applying for fellowships,
for the feature length.
Yeah, I really wanted. That's what I saw the elk as this vehicle. It became something very different,
as films usually do.
Yes, especially documentaries. You know, you think you start out with one idea, and then really the story tells you that it's something else. And so I was at last fall, I was at Bend Film Space Camp, which is just an artist development lab it's an amazing artist development lab.
Yeah, they've done a great job there in Bend.
Yeah. And I was at base camp, and I was hearing all these people pitch their amazing ideas, and I just didn't feel like Monumental was quite ready yet. The project hadn't found its like narrative arc yet. Wasn't quite sure, but I knew that the elk was coming back, and I thought, you know what? I think I can make a short about this. And so the person who was my mentor during the program, Pete Nix, who's a documentary filmmaker, he said, hey, you know, I've got this great editor. I was looking for an editor if I was going to do the elk film. And he said, I have this editor who I've worked with on a few films. He lives here in Bend. Why don't I introduce you? And that was Lawrence LaRue, who lives in Bend and is an editor, great editor. And he and I met at like the happy hour or something for Bend Film and for filmmakers. And we just really hit it off. Like, he intuitively understood the story that I was trying to tell on both projects. Wow. And so we, over the next, we really put together the elk really fast, like over the next 6 weeks for a documentary.
Wow, that is fast.
Yeah, we did maybe into early December, we did, I think, 12 or 13 interviews. And then we thought that the elk was going to come back in November.
Right.
And we would have footage, and we'd have all of our footage of like the elk's return and be able to hand it over to Lawrence to finish the film. And then the elk's return got pushed back and pushed back and pushed back to April. And what we were really trying to do is get this film into the Panorama Film Festival to premiere there.
Right.
And so we had to make a film about the return of the elk without actual footage.
Without the actual elk.
Of the elk's return. And let me just say that was like, I don't recommend that, taking on that kind of challenge to any filmmaker, any documentary filmmaker, any filmmaker. However, Lawrence did a great job at figuring out the structure of the story. And one of the things that he did with the elk is that he had a friend who, a cinematographer named Derek Knowles, who had filmed a ton of footage during the 2020 protests in Portland. And he knew that Derek had this footage and had never used it. And one of the things we really needed for this film is something that contextualized why the elk was taken away. And we needed to explain the story of why the elk was taken away. And in some of our early discussions, I had, talked to Lawrence about how I really didn't think the film was about protest. I saw protest as the inciting event for the story. And he was like, oh, no. Actually, this is I think this is a film about protest. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, I think it is. And I thought about it, and then I saw the footage, and then we started interviewing people, and it was the thing that came up over and over again. Why did the elk come down? And without looking at why it came down, you really don't understand the story of what happened to Portland in 2020.
Yeah.
And that story of what happened to Portland in 2020 is much bigger than Portland. It's much bigger than a story about a statue in some town, which could be anywhere. And so having that footage from 2020 from the protests, it's really, I hate to describe it as beautiful, but it's very cinematic,
right?
And it's elegantly shot, and it's just, it brings something special to the film that wouldn't have been there had it just been a lot of talking head interviews about the elk, or the footage that we did ultimately end up getting, which is a lot of footage of it moving when it was being repaired. And we have some incredible drone footage of it moving through the city of Portland.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, on its way to being repaired.
Yeah.
And so the story of the elk is, the story of what happened in 2020 in Portland and its aftermath.
So it's about the elk, but it's not really about the elk.
Right.
It's a much bigger story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. And, the film brings in some architectural historians, and there are people who were there during the protests, some journalists who were covering it, and activists who were there during the protests, and an ACLU lawyer who was a legal observer. And then we have, some people who were real advocates for it returning. So you see these different slices of Portlanders, these different kinds of people who have very, really, I would describe them as varied, and, many of them come from the same sort of political motivations, but have really different beliefs about what the city is and what it should be. Yeah.
Which I think is, without getting, too off track, I feel like that is Portland.
Yeah.
We have so many people who want the best for Portland, but there are so many different ideas of how to go about that.
Yeah.
We can never really agree on it, and that's why we can't fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a few people in the film who, there's a funny scene that it always kind of makes me chuckle when there's one of the architects says, she's talking about the elk, and it is literally a fountain in the middle of the street, and it's kind of absurd. It's this kind of absurd little thing or big thing, and so she sort of jokes. She's like, "There's PBOT, there's ODOT, there's the Parks, department, there's the Water Bureau. There's all these bureaucracies that are involved in this one sculpture." And then there's another, historian who's he feels like it took a long time to get it back, and an unnecessary amount of time, which I'm not sure that I 100% agree with.
Yeah, it felt like a long time. As a Portlander who missed the statue, it felt like it was a long time.
Yeah.
But I just kind of trusted the process. Like, I know it's going to come back. We keep hearing it's going to come back.
Right. Yeah, things do take time. And we have people in the film who say that, that like something that came down in a day can't necessarily be put back in place in a day. Right. So I have a lot of these, I think a really wide variety of Portland voices in the film talking about what the sculpture means, to them, but also in the context of the protests and also in the context of Portland's, I don't know if recovery is the right word, but it's emergence out of the tumult of 2020.
Mm-hmm. I like to think of it as our evolution.
Yes, exactly.
We're evolving.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so while you were doing the elk, while you were filming and interviewing, did you discover that it really was part of your overall feature on monuments? I mean,
it's such an interesting question because this was intended initially to be this like really solid 10-minute sample, use it for fundraising, use it for, and it became a 30-minute film because the material said this is a 30-minute film. And I don't actually think that the elk is going to be I think it'll be a really minor part of the overall feature. I think it'll be I think some of that protest footage will make it into the overall feature, or other pieces of that footage will make it into the overall feature. I think there will probably we'll use some of the footage that we shot of the return of the elk, as part of the overall feature to just kind of show, well, here's a thing that came back. But actually other stories have emerged as being, just as compelling, if not more, with some of the, the human elements that are happening, that are even right now still happening with the feature. So I think they're actually going to be very different films, like really, really different films. Yeah.
And so when you talk about the human elements, is that just in Portland, or is that across the nation?
Well, we'll probably have some interviews that will contextualize what happened with monuments in 2020 around the nation. But what has happened with the story of the feature film is, I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah, I don't want you to give too much away either.
But what we're seeing with the feature film is we're watching in real time as Portland grapples with what emblems of westward expansion.
Right.
So I've been following what's going on with the possible, or with the installation of the York sculpture, for example, and with a couple of other monuments, including what will happen with the Lincoln sculpture. And the Lincoln was one that was toppled in 2020. And there has been quite a bit of debate around how to return it. Most people agree that it should come back. Not everyone does, but it is it's slated to come back in a reinterpreted way. So it's not going to be on the same plinth that it was on. And there's been a lot of debate about that and whether that's appropriate. A lot of people have strong opinions around that. And then there's a monument called Promised Land that was removed in 2020 because it was right at the heart of the protests, and it was just in the crosshairs of a protest. It was right at the center of everything, and we've been following the story of that particular monument, and it is a monument to the Oregon Trail that was not loved in Portland when it was installed 30 plus years ago, and has never been really embraced. And when it was removed, it was like kind of maybe a relief to some of the people in the city's arts administration who, they had an excuse to say, well, maybe it doesn't need to come back. I wouldn't say excuse. That's not the right phrase. They had a reasoning. Yeah. They were like, well, public sentiment is now, agrees that maybe this isn't an appropriate monument. for Portland. And so I've been following what is happening with that monument, and there's a town in Eastern Oregon that wants it.
Oh.
And so we've been following the story of, of what they want, what they're seeking. And as you know, as all filmmakers know, stories that have people who want something to happen are like the most compelling narratives that we can, that we can either write as if we're writing something, imaginative, or as a nonfiction storyteller, if you're following the story of somebody wanting something badly, then that makes for a compelling narrative. Automatically.
We're humans. That's what we want to see.
We
want to see the struggle.
Right.
And so the York statue, you mentioned that. Now, if I remember correctly, that just sort of appeared in one of our parks.
It did, yeah.
But now they're talking about making it permanent?
Yeah. The York sculpture was initially put up I think it's fiberglass or a temporary material. And it was put up in 2021, at the beginning of 2021, on Mount Tabor. And it was put in the place of, it was on a plinth where a monument had been toppled. And that monument had been to one of the sort of Portland city founders, who was a publisher of the Oregonian. And that monument had been toppled, and there were actually no plans to replace that monument either. And an anonymous artist put this temporary bust of York up there. And then it was, I think, about 6 months later, that too was toppled by like a right-wing protester, and people were really saddened when that happened, because the York, even though it was a temporary bust, there had been talks to make a real version of it, a permanent version, bronze version of it. And in fact, that was what the city was proceeding with, is to make this sculpture. And then it wasn't, I think they actually haven't officially decided to return it to Mount Tabor yet. I think that's where it's going to go, but we're following that piece of the story as well. So York, there will be a York sculpture somewhere in Portland, a New York sculpture somewhere in Portland. It's, and that is, the artist is no longer anonymous. It's Todd McGrain is the name of the artist.
Yeah. Hey there. If you're enjoying this episode of Oregon Indie Film, don't go anywhere. We've got more great conversation coming up. And if you believe in uplifting local voices and the power of independent storytelling, we'd love your support. Hit that follow button, share the show with a friend, or leave us a quick 5-star review. It makes a big difference. Want to get more involved? Reach out at OregonIndieFilm@gmail.com. Now, back to the episode. It's so interesting. I mean, just the concept of the sculptures and the intersection between art and politics and westward expansion and our history. I mean, it's a huge conversation that we probably don't have time for today, but it's so interesting, and I imagine that you're uncovering a lot.
Yes, definitely. I think, this is a topic that that is, I said earlier I didn't want to nerd out too much.
No, nerd out. I find it very interesting.
Yeah,
so.
I think that there are, I know that there are a lot of people who also find this interesting. Yeah. We're surrounded by these emblems, you know, and they carry a lot of meaning to many people, and they have weight, literal physical weight, and metaphorical weight in our lives, and so they, when they go away, they create an absence, or when they're installed, they create, some sort of energy that exists in a community, even though they're these like sort of solid, allegedly immovable objects. Yeah. And so they're I find them fascinating. I've found them fascinating since I was a kid. I tell people this all the time, but I think that I can trace my interest in monuments to my 10th birthday, when my parents, we were in New York City I got to go to the Statue of Liberty. And
right.
yeah, and I went to a Yankees game that day too, so it was a big birthday.
Wow.
And I got a camera, like my first
Wow.
camera. Yeah.
That was a pivotal point in your
It
life.
It was. And so I took, probably dozens of photos of the Statue of Liberty of all angles, from all angles of approach. I still have them. And I think that moment imprinted on me visually, and also the symbolism of this big object. It was the first big thing like that I'd seen as a kid, who had mostly grown up in Oregon. And I think I took a lot from that.
Yeah. Wow. So the Elk is a very Portland story, as we've talked about. How does it feel? Is this the premiere at PFCAT?
No, it premiered at, a version of it premiered at the Panorama Film Festival.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm,
right, you said that. Yeah, without the actual...
Well, we added like 45 seconds of footage to the end.
Yeah, nice. And so do you have plans to screen beyond that, or what's your plan for the Elk?
Yeah. My plan for the Elk is I really, it's in the, independent filmmakers will feel this pain of the limbo of film freeway right now.
Right.
I'm just waiting to hear from, some festivals, the kind of the October festival rush. Yeah. And it will be playing down in Brookings at the Wild Rivers Festival in August, and it'll be at PFCAT, or Portland Festival of Cinema, Animation, and Technology in a few weeks. And there'll be a screening for city employees, actually, for City of Portland employees.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's coming up in August as well. And then we're going to have a free screening as well that the City of Portland is also sponsoring.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. Unfortunately, we haven't set a date for that yet, so I can't say when that will be. I'm hopeful that it'll be sometime in September. But yeah, it'll be, screening locally quite a bit, and fingers crossed it'll be in a few film festivals, over the course of the next 6 months as well around the country. Yeah.
And then beyond that, do you have plans, or will you be ready to move on to your feature?
Yeah, I'm already working on already continue to working on the feature. I think we'll probably actually wrap most of our production on the feature by the end of the year, and we'll definitely start editing it in January. But there are some events that might be happening early in 2027 that will continue to follow. But I think we'll wrap a lot of the production by probably by the end of October, maybe this year. And still have maybe just a few things to shoot in 2027. And so these are all happening concurrently.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that the Elk has a long and happy life. Eventually it will, hopefully live on a platform somewhere, fingers crossed. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, talking about that, documentaries are much different in the form of distribution than narrative film. Do you have any words of wisdom about distribution and kind of, I know it's changing, it's evolving. Nobody really knows, but.
Yeah. I think there's been some really tough blows with documentary filmmaking in the last year or so. Obviously, the demise of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has made documentary filmmaking it really just knocked out a leg of the stool of distribution and funding for projects of the kind that Monumental is definitely one of those kinds of I would describe it as kind of a PBS film.
Right.
That was kind of my intention going into this production. And so the distribution outlook has changed quite a bit from when I first started thinking about this project in 2024 or 2023 really. But I'm also just seeing some really cool new stuff emerge. There's just so many ways for a film to get seen locally there's so many ways in Portland to show your film. There's an avid audience for cinema here. We have so many different incredible ways of screening things, whether it's like, small scale in like the Sunnyside Community Center, the former church, like that's a great place to screen that many documentaries are screened, whether it's at, the Tomorrow Theater or the Clinton or whatever. There's so many ways for people to get their films seen by the public, whether for a local audience. That said, it's not easy to get the film made, right? And so, my focus right now is on, fundraising and getting that, getting this, the money that is necessary to finish production and start editing. I think that if I do have any advice, it's the advice that I've learned in the last few months. I was really lucky. I was a part of the first cohort of a program that Oregon Film put together with the Portland Events and Film Office. Yeah,
that was fantastic.
Yeah. It was a part of the Sundance Collab. The Bridge is what it was called. Yeah. I was really lucky to be a part of that and learned quite a bit about some of the emerging distribution opportunities in that program.
Good.
A big shout out to that program. It was just amazing. Big thank you to I was the only documentary filmmaker in it, and it was really I learned so much. And I think one of the things I took away from it is to just be really creative about how you get your film out in the world. The advice right now is think about your distribution plan as the film is in production.
Yes.
And that's hard because all you can think about when the film is in production is sometimes cobbling together enough money for production insurance or for, your next shoot.
Your location.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's just it's really tough to think beyond, sometimes the immediate needs that your project has. But if you can, to be, whether it's in the back of your mind or whether it's brainstorming with a producer friend or something, to start thinking about ways that it might live in the world. And one of the strengths that I think documentary filmmakers bring to the table is that in documentary, there has long been a tradition of impact producing. And so impact producing is just this, many documentaries are about subjects where there might be an element of persuasion or an element of bringing to light an untold story that has really strong constituencies or stakeholders in it that want to see that film in their communities around the country. And so documentary has that tradition of that is sometimes why films are made. And so there's a really strong, there's established patterns and a toolkit for bringing films into audiences that are not necessarily your local Cineplex, that are in fact really great independent distribution networks for that might help that are maybe sometimes better than having a distributor that is that where you're only getting a small cut of the receipts from the film. If you've got an avid audience that cares about the subject matter of your film, willing to pay, $10 a person to see it in a library in, I don't know, Bend or whatever, any town across the country, that's fantastic. That's amazing.
It is, yeah.
So I think what I took away from not just that collab, the Sundance collab, the Bridge program that Oregon Film did, not just that, but some of the other stuff that's, really emerging kind of in the wake of the collapse of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and all the other emerging platforms that are out there for independent filmmakers, is that you just have to be really creative about getting your work out in the world. And it takes energy. And
it takes as much energy as making the film, really.
Oh my gosh, maybe more. Yeah, maybe more.
And so fundraising for Monument, if people want to support that film, how could they do that?
Yeah, they can go to makingmonumental.com. There's lots of links there. There's a trailer for the film on that website, makingmonumental.com.
Okay.
There's a trailer, and the film is has fiscal sponsorship from Film Independent, so people can make a tax-deductible contribution.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That always helps.
Yeah, helps a lot.
Yeah. And I always like to ask this question of my guests, and that is, what is your big, beautiful dream for yourself? So it doesn't have to be film-related. I mean, you do a lot of other things too, but if time and money were not an object, what is your big, beautiful dream for your life?
Like personally, I would like to write another book. I'd like to make another feature film. And I'd like to have some fun making some shorts that are maybe a little bit more playful and shorts, 5 to 10 minute shorts.
Documentary style? Or?
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have dabbled in some screenplay writing, but it's not my strength.
Yeah.
But like my big dream, if budget were no object, I would have a documentary production company that found small projects and nurtured them, and was able to support them as like a co-producer or as a as an executive producer of documentaries.
Nice. So helping other filmmakers tell the stories that are important to them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that would be my dream. A dream job.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Is there anything else you want to share or talk about? Or I know there's going to be a filmmaker Q&A on Friday after the block at the Portland Festival of Cinema, Animation, and Technology. It's quite a mouthful. Yeah. So you'll be there for that.
I will be there for that. And that film slate, the other films on the schedule are so incredible. It's like such a privilege to be in that group of films. I'm really excited. One of them is Oh Whale, which is made by some friends who are just terrific filmmakers, and I'm excited for all to see. I haven't seen one of the other films that's on the schedule, so I'm really thrilled. I think that anyone who attends the festival, that this is like kind of a must-see block of documentaries.
Nice.
And I'm excited to see. I think that some of the most creative work is happening in animation in that space.
I know. It's wild in Portland. We have so much going on.
I'm just thrilled to be able to like see what some of the animators are doing, and I'm just excited to see like what else is at the festival.
Nice. Well, I'll include information in the show notes.
Okay, great.
For the festival. I think tickets are on sale now.
They are,
for that. And then also your website, fundraiser for, it's called Monumental.
Yes,
not the Monumental.
Yeah, Monumental. Yep. And the website is, makingmonumental.com.
Makingmonumental.com. So thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was really fun to have this discussion.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening. You can find more information about the Portland Festival of Cinema, Animation, and Technology and Erika's documentary, The Elk, in the show notes. Tickets are available now for the festival, the screening of The Elk, and the filmmaker Q&A that follows. Be sure to subscribe and listen to this podcast for upcoming interviews with other filmmakers whose films have been selected to screen at this summer's PFCAT. I have some great guests coming up. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to share it with your friends. We'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review. Help us connect with more indie film lovers. Would you like to support the podcast by becoming a guest or a sponsor? Reach out at OregonIndieFilm@gmail.com.